Hi, folks. Nick Tuckert here with the Historical Fencing Guild. Before we get into it, I've got to pay a couple bills, and we will talk some shop. So first and foremost, I need to put a shout out to ndcd.org. Yes, ndcd.org, the Independent Creator Directory, is the host for some of the best authors, artists, and creatives out there. And they will soon be doing a special summer half off for the first, 5 days of July. Where you can get your membership for only $10. This is a great opportunity. We're also, of course, made possible by the affiliate link to woodenswords.com. That's Purple Heart Armory. I get a small portion of anything you buy from there. However, I do not let that affect any of my reviews. I believe in integrity. If I don't like something, I will say I don't like it. If I do like something, I will definitely say I do like it, and we will. And if you want to buy it, it costs you nothing, but gets me a little something through them, and more importantly, gets me a little more credit with the company. But most of all, beyond the simple sword, the fighting axe, and the simple spear, my ongoing series of how to learn the basics of assorted weaponry, as well as my sort of game design stuff, which really doesn't apply to this channel, we are made possible by my Patreon folks. The folks who, for as little as $1 a month, help me keep the lights on, afford to buy trainers, and review materials for you. So, before we get into that, let's talk about what today's episode is going to be about. Well, we have a bit of survival discussion due to a video that I put out first for the only because I wanted to check. I had to express my emotions about something and my thoughts. I wanted to put it out to the Patreon community to see what they thought about it. And then they asked me very much to put it out here for some great reasons, and I'm going to talk about that. After that, we will be going to the aforementioned purpleheartarmory.com to talk about some of their gear, because there is a tragic loss in the gear side of our community that I feel needs to be discussed. So we will be getting into that. But before I do, I want to catch up with who's in the chat right now, and then we will go on further. First and foremost, first person through the door quite early was Alex Creations. Hi, Alec. Glad to see you. Bladed Thesis. Here I come to watch the stream. Cindy Kep is sneaking in, and Alec is greeting everybody. So we have caught up with that. A couple of weeks ago, I put up a video out on originally as a secret link just towards the Hysterical Fencing Guild Patreon folks. And that was to let them understand something that happened where a comment that I have received many times from either well-meaning or not well-meaning individuals online was actually given to me basically to my face. And it boils down to this. I've seen what you do. I need a weapon, you don't. And it goes on. I mean, you need a weapon, I don't. I'm sorry. And it goes on from there. Where, this swelling, it usually happens when people are upset or whatever. And it did happen to me while I was in the presence of someone I respect, someone I care about. And that set a series of thoughts where it just echoed for days. And, like any discussion, like any point, there were give and takes and there were points to have discussed. But there are also things you have to be careful, because a misconstrued or intended discussion of physical violence shuts down everything else. I'm sorry, I have a message. Let me make sure that this isn't anything pressing, and get this muted. I apologize. And yes, this is now muted. Excellent. Sorry, I don't take messages during my programs whenever possible. We have, over the course of this, we've had to talk about self-defense. I'm not going to repeat myself here. It's a rather emotional video. It was necessary for me to film because I needed to get it out there. And when I have something that I feel can help others, and my reasoning for this is not what you think. It's not bravado. It's not anger or resentment. It's people have come to me for a couple things, and one of them is, the practical side. They want survival, and they want survival advice. And the problem with that is survival advice, real survival advice, is rarely heroic. And I am something of a student of violence. I've endured a lot of it in personal settings. I've endured a lot of it in professional settings, not in rings and sparring, although I was competitive as a swordsman for quite some time in the Society for Creative Anachronism. And I have more than a few injuries from that to understand what that can do. And I have some gear that can prove what that can do with even something as seemingly safe as a rapier. But we have to talk about the ramifications of violence a bit, because the consequences of violence do not stop with the violent act, and they don't stop with on either side. If you have any type of empathy, if you inflict violence on someone and you are of any type of empathy, if you have any caring for others, it damages you. Okay, it it hurts you, and when we have to process this, it's not easy. Uh, it's not fun to look back and think about what you did. Guilt exists for a reason, and it's one of the most powerful emotions, so it has to be thought of. The other thing when we talk about violence is violence very often, violence is never right. It may be necessary in some horrible instances, but we really have to go into life thinking about our victory conditions, and this is why if somebody, calls me a name or insults me, I may get mad. Sure, I'm human. I have my faults. Uh, or come at me. I don't. But you can't ever take the conversation to a place of instigating violence. And for me, it's ironic. In my life, as somebody who's endured violence, uh, feel free, Thesis. You are both a good friend and a patron member. Thesis says he has some questions he'd like to ask off air. That's fine. Uh, Now, when I talk about the SCA, my local group and my situation was very abnormal. So I do not hold any issue against them at large. I just went through, because of some very unpleasant people, some difficult times. And that brings us right back, because for me, the proposed threat of violence is actually very much worse than the act of violence. Because uh, if if you if you're threatened with violence, then you don't know when it begins, you don't know when it ends. And in my history, and it is because of my history, uh, the situation, boy, it echoes. So I have to be very careful with things said in anger, because one thing I try to be is an honorable man. So if I say something in anger, I have to hold myself to it. And I don't like that. I want to be on good terms with everybody, especially people I respect, especially people I love, even when we have conflict. Um, so we have to be careful, because there, like I talked in the video, I mentioned there's a mythos, a fantasy of self-defense that's out there, and it's one of the most dangerous aspects, uh, because the negatives don't get covered properly. In the case of, a self-defense action, you still might go to court. You still may incur legal fees, even if you are found not guilty and released to go on your way. You may lose employment. And ties to that, violence is not to be taken lightly. This is why when I say, if you have concerns about violence, and I'm not talking the high school model of violence, because the high school model of violence is very much like the prison model of violence, believe it or not, in that you are in a confined space at specific times with individuals not of your choosing. That is a different ballpark than being out in the real world, where you have a whole lot of opportunity and a legal expectation to disengage and flee whenever possible. Okay? The law doesn't look as escaping violence as a cowardly act or negative act, with certain exemptions. Things like when I was working providing care for special needs people, I could not leave the facility. And the term the facility is the home, the building, I could not leave that person unattended, even if they were actively trying and or succeeding in doing me harm. I could not leave them unattended. So fleeing becomes a different kind of scenario. But in the real world, in the standard world in America, which is where most of my experiences lie, certainly all my violent experiences, you are obligated to escape if possible. So there's a lot of problematic things about that. And this is the part nobody wants to hear. When you talk about survival, taking your money and throwing it one way and you running the other, well, that's cowardly. You should beat up the bad guy. I'm not Jackie Chan. Okay? I'm not a superhero. Even at my healthiest, that's not how I neutralize the threat. Getting out and getting away neutralizes the threat. A better way to neutralize the threat is through cautious situational awareness, where you're doing things like, okay, is this a safe place to be? No, then I'm not going to go there. What is my exit strategy? What is my fallback plan? What is my contingency? So I have to work in this line of thought always. Because more often than just me, I'm traveling with my son, who is special needs and cannot be held amiably. Cannot be held amiably. Can't be held for his actions when he is angry because he's both a child and special needs. He doesn't always reason right. And I have to do my best to teach him. But as good as what I do as I am, and I am, no one can predict everything. So I have to try. And I think when we talk about why you want to learn martial arts, it's very telling, and what you intend to do with it. Because if you go out looking for trouble, a couple things, you will find trouble. You go far enough, you'll find it. But the other thing is, guys, I want to walk a path of peace. I really do. And I like to walk a path of peace when I'm awake and when I'm asleep. So we can't seek engagement. And it's hard. The other time, and we'll get into that because Cindy makes a point, and I'm going to get into the comments to come back to this, where we have no other option. And I believe in playing my cards on the table. It's how I am. I'm a simple guy. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. Now, once that's established, I'm happily done with it. But we have to be careful when we seek training as to why and what we're doing with it, and who we want to be because of it. The goal is to become more confident, to be safer, to be healthier. It is never to be a bully. It is never to be the aggressor. The world is full of aggressors in that style, and they don't do good in this. If you wish to be an aggressor, if you wish that lifestyle, you can either take a martial art and do it in a ring where it's supervised and relatively safe. I mean, fighters still die and are maimed every year, but it's relatively safe. If you want to do weapon-based styles, do it in the ring. Get a marshal of some sort. Get a ref. Train, armor up, be safe. But it all goes out the window when an unattached setting. And we have to control ourselves and remember that. This is why I did not study a style of applied aggression. I don't need a style to unlock my capacity for applied aggression. It's a natural human element. What I studied was to learn to control my anger. And most of the time, I try to control my thoughts. Because thoughts become words, words become actions, actions become habits, and habits are who you are after a while. So I think it needs to be discussed. And when somebody acts out of character, sometimes that has to have a discussion. But the real points have to be laid out. So I'm getting the comments, and then we're gonna just remember the best way to neutralize the threat is either to make a friend or avoid the situation at all. Just back off. That's the best way to avoid the conflict. See it coming and avoid it if at all possible. You know, a great way is, what would the dumb person in a horror movie be doing? And don't do that. But we've got a lot of comments coming up in the chat, and I want to go over them. And then after that, we're going to get to some slightly more chipper discussion. Let's see, Sneak. You had some questions you wanted to ask off air, but someone is looking to set up a chapter of the SCA in my area. I have misgivings. Okay, I want to see what the chat says before I respond. There are good folks in the SCA, and there are not good folks in the SCA, and there are some who are downright messed up. I think that applies to any organization. That's my issue, Cindy. I know a lot of the people in the area through my old Boffer and would rather not associate with them if I had a choice. Cindy continues, and she says that she understands that the SCA is very cliquish. And so before we get into the next part, because the next part goes into what I was discussing, I guess I'll have to wade in on this. I try not to, but that seems to be the theme of today's activities. The SCA is like any other group, is exactly what the people who make it put into it. Now, it can be very cliquish from my experiences. It can have problematic aspects because for some people, knowing where the line of fantasy and reality and the priorities of which can be difficult. I would say if you have concerns, simply step back. There is nothing wrong with looking at a situation going, I'm not kosher with this is not kosher with me. Even if you don't know why, just step back. Now you can pay attention, you can see how people act, you can keep an ear to the ground, so to speak. But I don't want to paint everyone with the brush of one organization, with the brush of some individuals. And a lot of it boils down to, is the juice worth the squeeze? Being a member of a group like that has benefits. You can learn a lot of skills. You can make a lot of connections. You can have a wide variety of individuals from a martial aspect to train with. But it also comes at the social difficulties and understanding that because the society especially has a ranking system that runs parallel and overlaps the martial ranking, where and I suppose it is a bit like how if you've ever been around a dojo where they take the belts a little too far in I have this belt, that means I'm better than blah blah blah. That can be used and as a way to abuse others. It becomes a social engineering thing. That is very easy in the role play side of the Society for Creative Anachronism, because there is a role play side where people take their persona and they pretend to be someone else, and their loyalties and maneuvering and intrigues, and there are people who thrive. The problem is, think of it just like the social climbers in an office place or anywhere else. There will always be people playing that level of the game. So when you look at something like the SCA from a martial standpoint or a member standpoint, you have the training and the tournament opportunities to test yourself. You have an advancement track of what are your authorizations. And an authorization is, and this, I am way out of date, so take everything I say with a grain of salt and check your local SCA rapier field. I'm a rapier, so I go, your marshal's handbooks and stuff for how they're doing things. But there is a track of an authorization. And all an authorization is you are proven safe to be able to use one rapier in combat, two rapiers in combat, a rapier and a dagger in combat, a rapier and a rigid pairing device, a rapier and a non-rigid pairing device. So wait, let me see. Single case, rigid parry, non-rigid parry, single and dagger. That's the 5 primary rapier auths that I recall. So we have that. That is a track of advancement. And some tournaments you have to be able to fight all those styles of weapon, or they let you default to single, or sometimes they don't. Some tournaments, your gear has to be more. It has to be period looking. Sometimes it's period designed as possible, because the history element comes in, and that's cool because now you're learning armoring to make your own gear. And that's much more of a heavy fighter mentality. So that's sword and board, or weapon and board. So axe or sword and shield, uh, great arm, great sword, pole arm, Florentine, which is two swords, spear. Spear, sword and board, great sword, Florentine. I feel like I'm forgetting one. It's been a while. Oh, polearm. Because spear is different than polearm. Although a polearm can use a spear because you get into one-handed and two-handed thrust. It gets complex very quickly. And you have to remember, if you're doing that, you have to play by their conventions, which means their rules of combat. That needs to be discussed. So on that aspect, you have a hierarchy that you have to learn. There is a hierarchy of titled rank, starting with Lord and Lady, and then it goes up by different awards, usually given by the king and queen at the time. Sometimes you're expected to swear fealty. You're expected to acknowledge the king and queen as part of the role play aspect. Some people take this all very too seriously, and there's a whole award track for to be in the chivalry, which are the highest ranking. You have the knights. You have knights. You have the pelicans, which are the highest order of service, and those are the people who make food, and they make things and they give things. And then there is the third one for the arts. I can't remember the third one for the arts, and it's going to sit on the back of my mind because it's been a long time. But these are all parallel tracks with horizontal levels. It can get very bureaucratic, and with big personalities and people who are devoted to the game, especially because it lets them escape their mundane lives. You'll hear that a lot, mundane. And it's very easy to slip in this war between, living in the real world and living in the society. So you have to be careful with all this. When it is working, when it is great, it literally is a dream. It's a wonderland. When it's not, it's a nightmare. And in some cases, I've seen groups take on very cultish natures in households and other aspects. So it is something that has to be researched, because there's a lot more to it than simply learning the martial art, applying the martial art in either form analysis kind of tourneys where you're ranked not on whether you win or lose, but if you're doing everything right, or just skill tourneys. You have to balance all this out. There is a lot to it. I would do a lot of research before joining. Now, you mentioned that some of the people likely in your local area could be problematic. Well, that should be a big red flag, because if you join, you have to deal with them far more than you want to. So all that has to be weighed. I am not bashing the society. I learned a huge amount of things from the society, and even though it didn't work for me because of what happened, I don't bash it for others. And I certainly don't bash people who are still active, unless their individual activities and attitudes have earned it. But with that, if you're careful, be careful. But they're also not necessarily the only club. And the Historical Fencing Guild was originally founded as a bridge between groups like the Society for Creative Anachronism and Amp Guard, a boffer group in Canarak, and the dojo-based martial artists who were doing weapon styles. The goal was to bring people in so that they could sit at a table, talk about what they know, what they learn, and if there's interest, cross-train and try things from different organizations. You may end up joining them. That's fine. But we needed a neutral territory. And that's what the guild originally started out as, between that and a place to do workshops because there wasn't room at practice. When we would go to local practices, people wanted to spar. Fight, 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 fight. Let's go. I was one of them. It's great fun. Let's get out and go. There wasn't a lot of time to train. There wasn't a lot of time to discuss, to do the flip side, the research. So if you took it like a college class, the science of swordplay, you have the classroom portion and the lab. Sparring is the lab. Sparring is how you're testing a lot of this stuff. And you should be stress testing a lot of this stuff to see if the technique works or if it's what they call bullshito. But you need to put in the work. You need to put in some type of slow training. You need to put in some type of analyzed research practice when you don't know what you're doing, because you have to learn the rules to then know which rules you break because they work better for you. Okay? This is why the simple sword, this is meant to be a primer. Okay? The simple sword is not meant, or any of its addendums, to make you a master. This will teach you the basics, teach you how to set up some of your gear, and more importantly, how to share the basics you know. Okay? It's a class, it's a basic text to give you an intro, so that once you understand things in these terms, you can go to any of the other masters and go, okay, I'm reading Gigante, I'm reading Fabris, I'm watching a video on Thibault or something. One second. You need to go over these things so that you can learn. That's the balance. That's the point. And then train. And that's what we did. The problem is, and one negative I will admit I have found, especially in the society where I was, and your mileage may vary, and frankly, I hope it does, is that information is treated by many as a commodity, leverage for forced loyalty, leveraged for obedience, leverage for, well, if you want this award, you'll need to learn this, and I will teach you it, but you have to, study with me and not stay with others. You'll notice I do not operate that way because I've seen what happens when people do. Okay? So, I think that there are good and bad. And there are skill sets it's very hard to learn other. For example, if you join ARMA, what is it? The Association for Renaissance Martial Arts, I think, or Academy of Renaissance Martial Arts. I had actually planned to. I loved what they were about. They were translating manuals, doing in-depth study. And I'm going through, and then I saw something. In the joining the paperwork, there is a clause that says you can't teach outside of an ARMA function what you learn in ARMA. And that diametrically opposes my philosophy. Because my goal is to learn what I can, distill it to its simplest, digestible, I can understand this process, and then pass it to people to get them started. And when they outgrow what I'm giving, I want them to be able to build up beyond that. And that's done through everybody learning a basic system. And then, what are you interested in? If I don't know, let's find somebody who knows. But there's no system where having good footwork doesn't benefit you. There are very few instances or systems where parrying out from your center line is a bad idea. There will always be specific exemptions, but by teaching what is 60 to 80% of just about what I saw, everything I studied had this in it, I know you can learn the rest. Okay, so Fiore is a more forward stance. Your offhand is guarding your face. Okay, fine. Fabris is extremely forward-leaning. Gigante's way back here. Way back leaning. Much closer to what you see in a lot of the small sword manuals. Anything involving Destreza is upright, presented. These subtle differences are stylistic. They tell you about the style you're fighting against or that you're fighting, tells you about your opponent, so you need to learn how to analyze this a bit. But it is not necessarily the way to go. What I mean is, it's not the only way to do it. And anybody who tells you this is the only way, unless you are in the military and you are being taught by them, this is how you engage in whatever you're engaging in quickly and effectively, that's fine. But beyond that, you have to be careful. Now, Cindy says, yeah, when I was teaching, a knucklehead took a swing at me. We were in a crowd, so dodge was not an option, and duck meant someone would get hit. So I caught his arm and dropped straight down into a crouch, pulling him with me. I got busted for putting my hand on a child. When asked what I was supposed to do, absorb the punch. Yes, here's the thing. Being a teacher, even a substitute teacher, can put you in a lot of physical danger, especially these days. There's been an increase of physicality against teachers. I think it comes down to the style of upbringing in the home and the conditions that children are put under. So it's very hard. Now, I worked with behavioral students. I was a teacher's aide, and I had them aggress at me frequently. And you learn, sometimes you just have to take a punch. And part of going back all the way back to my original statement is to do what I've done working with special needs kids, working with my son, working with clients, working with adult clients, is I had to unlearn a lot of the physical self-defense that I learned, because if that reflex is there and if you do it right, it becomes a reflex. If you train enough, it becomes no thought. A couple days ago, I was sitting with my next door neighbor, Lester, whom I love. He's an amazing man. And the cats, he has lots of cats. They got out. Little kittens are running everywhere. It's a situation. But they knocked over something big and metal, and it sounded like something was coming through the brush at us. And he started up, and in the time that he was up, I had a 3-foot-long stick in my hand in a high guard, spinning to go deal with whatever was coming. And he went, wow, that was fast. I went, yes, I'm sorry. You didn't mean to start. No, you really do this. Yes, I've really done this for a while. If my reflex is to parry out, grab the wrist, dislocate the elbow, and, do something else ugly, because some of the systems in the past I've learned have been, somebody's got their hands on you, open with a finger break and go from there. I have no mitigated response if that's the reflex that I'm using. So I train. So I've trained in suppression. Now, for somebody built like Cindy, absorbing a punch is different than somebody built like me, which is different than somebody built like my buddy Ben was, or, a large 6-foot towering man. This is why something like crisis prevention and intervention, CPI, is something I believe every teacher should be certified in. They should be able to keep up on it, regularly encouraged to drill and test with the room made in their schedule for that. Because through that system, I have pulled disarms. I've disarmed knives and clubs and other things too disgusting to bring about here. I have defended myself against assorted weaponries and attempted assaults. I did screw up on the job once. I turned my back on a client not because I was not informed that something was part of his, we'll say, his plan, and he full body shouldered a door into me, and I was in the door frame, and it dislocated my shoulder. As he continued his assault, I had to forcibly relocate my shoulder into socket enough to put him in a therapeutic hold and maintain that hold until such time that he was calm, which took approximately 2 hours due to the nature of the client, their strength, and the situation. It still hurts. It still pops out of socket every so often. When I was fencing, why with almost everybody I wear a plastron, which I have to locate my plastron again. I was fencing with actually this rapier, and my opponent had one similar, and we both did beautiful lunges. And I made a mistake when I realized that we had both done a double lunge. I broke my shot off, but I did not successfully parry his away. It hit me the blunted tip. So this part of the old tape has to be redone. Is a rubber blunt, and I don't know how well it is. It is above a nail head above a flat piece of metal, all wrapped together, big rubber piece. This actually lodged in my ribs, and it ripped 5 of them from my sternum with the force of the impact, cracking 3 of them on the back and popping 1 in towards my lung. I did not realize it had done that until, I thought I was winded. I'm like, boy, I'm tired. The next day, my mother-in-law fell down, and we went to get the Hoyer lift, which is like an engine lifter. It has a crank to help bring her back to her feet. I turned the handle. I reached up to turn the handle to crank her lift, and I fainted. I blacked out from sheer pain. So my lovely wife had to help get her up and get me to the ER. And I was deferred to another doctor, and they examined me, and he literally put tape on me to tighten it up and said, drive carefully. Well, we went to the doctor. My doctor, who was a very nice South African man at the time. Well, I mean, he's still a former South African man, but he was my doctor at the time. Asked me, are you a Christian? Yes. That makes this easier. And he put the tape on. He said, go to the emergency room. Do not fall down. And I still had to go to the bathroom, so I left. I went to the bathroom. I lifted up my shirt, took a picture, went to turn, and as I turned, it flopped and it popped it back forward and just into where it had been disconnected from. Blinding pain. They did the x-rays. They found all the damage, and I had some issues. I had it rebroken goofing around a couple of years later, actually. But it's a very specific kind of pain. What we do can be dangerous, and I've endured great pain from my mistakes. So I try to pass that on. Being a substitute, I did break up fights. And I did so in such a way that no one got hurt with a skill set that I was rather good at, and that was before I was really a different, before I had this GPI training. I learned how to deal with things because I just want to deal with conflict as kindly as possible. Which sounds ridiculous in something like this, but you don't want to damage folks. Not everyone can do that. And if everyone is expected to be doing that, they need to have the training and the time and the recovery. Because after you've done that, no matter what it is, it takes a lot to be harmed by someone and walk, and be okay with it. It takes a whole lot to be harmed by someone, deal with it, calm them down, and then comfort them because they were scared by what happened. Or they realized, oh no, you have a cut, and now they're bawling because that they didn't understand they hurt you. It's different. And I've endured the violence of people who wished me ill to, extinction. They wanted to negate your local Nick. And I've had to deal with that as well. Teachers, the kind of people who make good teachers don't make good combatants usually. And I think it's a good thing that that's their nature, and a tragic thing that that's their necessity. So going further on, because I'm going to stop with the absorb the punch so I don't. And let's go all the way back up. Alex says, I don't want to be an aggressor because I have gotten beaten up by friends and then gotten assaulted. I do not want to be the one doing the harm. I will not be that kind of person. Excellent. And thesis, and that's why I don't mind you reading my book, Alec. Not that I could stop you. It's available at many public libraries. You could buy or download it yourself. You're coming at it from the right perspective. That's why it's a manual of defense. The historical. You see this right here? We talked about the top. Let's talk about the bottom. The Historical Fencing Guild's Manual of Defense, Volume 1. Not Manual of Aggression, not Manual of Warfighting. Manual of Defense. My fighting style isn't aggressive, but I will use my opponent's aggression against them. Absolutely. A lot of your judos, your hapkidos, a lot of them do that. People learn not to fight me angry because it gets redirected. And here's the horrible thing. When we are angry, we lose 20 points of IQ. Bam. Sounds very similar to my Boffer days. My first experience was a castle battle where my king had alliance with a pirate group proceeded to betray us as soon as the battle got started. Their excuse was pirates have no honor. And that's the whole thing. Interesting. Sierra didn't have multiple authorizations for light fighting. That's fascinating. There was a heavy authorization, a light fighter authorization, heavy martial authorization, and light martial authorization. That's fascinating because the Mid-Rome had it all broken up by categories. A blade thesis at least it was authentic. As I was leaving the group, Schlager was coming into vogue, and there was talk of that being an additional. I want to say heavy in a lot of kingdoms, because as last time I looked, which was many years ago, Schlager or heavy rapier was only a Middle Kingdom thing, and the kingdoms that went to the Pennsic War, which is a huge event in Pennsylvania, only got heavy authorizations for the purpose of that war. It wasn't something they did as standard weaponry. I do believe they I believe that Schlager is much more akin to side sword, and the new side sword, newer to side sword rules are much more concussive. I don't think the armor requirements meet the weapon requirements. I'm hoping that's changed. I was never cool enough to make it past an AOA, Award of Arms, and that took a friend. I had, let me see, an AOA, a Cavendish knot. I was a companion of the Cavendish knot, ironically for teaching rapier, and a purple fret that I earned because I autocrated an event, and I did a lot of other service things. My wife was 2 or 3 times the lady because they didn't realize it was the same person, and she got her purple fret, I believe. Laurel, thank you. A laurel. Oh, thank you, Cindy. That would have haunted me. Really, really bureaucratic. That being uncool enough to get nowhere seems to be a theme. I'm wondering if the same problem I'm having the same problem in the Christian writer group. I am sorry to hear that. The local SCA was at a con recruiting one time. I was cosplaying a Renaissance era character from one of my books, while my mom was cosplaying a medieval character. And SCA looked that way down their nose at me because my Renaissance wasn't accurate to period, but it was much accurate to the book, and they were more friendly towards my mom because she was dressed more properly. She had zero interest in them. That happens. I only know because of a guy I met through my old Shifu. Sorry. A local author was having an event she wrote a sword and sorcery book. Brought in the Shifu to do a martial arts demonstration and brought a small group down, did HEMA. After the event went local and talked HEMA and SCA. Now, the HEMA group might be something if there's a HEMA group, that's a different ballpark. You might really like HEMA quite a bit more, but you will have to. HEMA is much more. We fight, pick the master, fight as close to the master, historical reenactment more than recreation that the SCA was. I've kept in touch with him through Facebook. He contacted me a week ago about starting a group down there. Now, it's one of those, do you trust him? Knowing the pros and cons, you could do a lot. I don't want to be considered bad-mouthing any organization. And I'll tell it what I know and what it can be. I learned a lot through it. But you just look at the pros and cons. I can't tell you yes or no. What I can tell you is do the research, do the pros and cons, and understand at any point you can run with them, and if you don't like it, you can leave. I've been reading The Simple Sword. I'm glad to hear it. It's very, very much worth reading. The pictures help a lot. I am glad. It was supposed to be of service. I was supposed to test Wu style fast form tomorrow, but the teacher is refining his technique with his teacher for attorneys, and he's passing that info on to me. So not quite ready yet, and that's okay. I don't want to test it until I know the thing. Wonderful. That is how it should be handled, and that sort of test is close to what an authorization bout is to people who don't understand. I think I've mentioned that my first boffer battle, I got 5-minute safety lecture teaching me basic blocks and was sent off to fight. I had no prior. Had I had no prior experience, it would have been bad. Yeah, and that kind of organization flee from, because if they're unsafe, you're going to get hurt. Yikes! Alex Creation. Cindy is saying to Alec, it's an interesting book. Lots of cool info. Thank you. It was a passion project. A good book, especially for someone who is just getting into the European martial arts. When you have a background in a different style, you can see the similarities. Those were the two views I wanted to get because I want more East and West discussion. I want more people sorting things out. One of the teachers I was teaching at wanted to train all the teachers in CPI, but the instructor came at me and said, nope, hold on. Not you. The cane was considered a weapon that the children might grab and use. Depending on the school and situation you're in, absolutely. Absolutely. Because of my current physicality, I am not eligible to work my old job. Foxy said we should do another Cursed Sword review because now I have an HD webcam so people can see the torment on my face in real time. We could set that up. Alex says, I refuse to stoop lower than the people who have abused my kindness. I used to convince myself everyone has good in them, even a little. Some people are not worth it. That is one of the great tragedies. They may not be worth it now. They may not be. Unless your calling is a very specific thing, you can't save everyone. And sometimes you can't save the ones you love. And you have to just step back. Everyone in our lives teaches us something. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's negative, sometimes they show us what we don't want. And learning from that will help us be better. Always learn. You see, it's a bit of a macho quote. I don't lose. I either win or I learn. But there's a lot of truth to that to be said too. Now, unsafe. The first battle I got hit in was no less 6 times in the head 6 times and not supposed to be. Yep. Now, before we go on any further, I want to talk about some other things. We just got word in after all this time that the order of the parry daggers has been declined because they don't have them. They thought they did. So basically, they held on to our money for a couple months to get the interest of having that much money extra in their account, and then finally went, here, we'll reimburse you. This is problematic. So I will be looking for, okay, the single best parry dagger trainer made has been discontinued. What are we going to look at now? And I do have a place to take that if you give me a second to rearrange, because I'm not fighting the computer issues. We're going to go here. And we are at Purple Heart Armory, and we are at their light fencing area. We are at their light fencing area for a couple of interesting things. 350 newtons is a standard fencing jacket. I am rather intrigued by this because I need a jacket in my size, but unfortunately most of these are only armored by handedness. And okay, I think that's maybe that's for the opening. That could be it too. But I want to see the sizing, if it will bring up. Custom size. You have to add $63. So that makes it very, very expensive. But let me see. I could theoretically, I could almost fit in the XXL, except my height is way down here. So by my height, they think I would need a small or an extra small. And I need an XXL. That tells you how round I am. And what they give you is an opportunity to get all your measurements for it. And that's probably how I would have to do it. It would be, that makes it nearly $300. Actually, it makes it over $300. Ugh. So that's something I have to hold off on. Technically, I have money I could put towards it, but I need to put things to the facilities. Another interesting thing coming up is these high guard gloves. I wanted to mention these. Oh. And yep, and even stepping back when you drastically don't want to because it depended on a person's life. It's not my fault for the deaths of any of my loved ones, but it's not my fault, and I've accepted that. Binder. That's how that's kind of measurement and used for my binder. Yeah, armor works that way. You'll have to be extra careful with your armoring because you still need extra protection for your chest, regardless of what happens, because of repeated impacts have been proven to increase breast cancer in men and women. And yes, men can have breast cancer, just much more common in women. Bake sale. Well, speaking of bake sale things, now I am intrigued by these gloves because I am trying to find, and these almost look, oh, I don't know. I need a comfortable set of gloves to provide reasonable rapier protection while I am fencing with my gear, and they have to be lightweight. Now, some people really like the Red Dragon gloves, and I wanted to point those out because they're on sale for $100, which is a lot cheaper than they used to be, and that is competitive with lacrosse gloves. They also are starting to carry back of the head protection for your mask, which obviously is something that could probably be fairly simply crafted yourself. But by getting something like that and your gorget, you may have a good, you could get a rudimentary set. Get elbow guards, get knee guards at least. These are wonderful things to have. And at the cost of 26 and 16 for just basic light duty kind of stuff, which is where we tend to lean, I do think these are great ideas. Now, I wanted to comment on something. So we're going to go European martial arts. We're going to go basic trainers. I think I spent $15 on my gloves. Rose Gardner gloves I added a cuff to. Absolutely. I had beautiful fencing gloves that were they were cuffed white like cavalry gloves. I have no idea where I got them. I think they were an Army surplus store. But they were leather with a rigid denim style cuff. I wore them for years till they died. But since the parry daggers I wanted to order are discontinued, I may have to order. Let me see. Oh, it went there. That's interesting. So I'm going to have to go back. Give it a second. Yeah. And we'll just have to scroll through to find what they've got the parry daggers under. I will say again, the Bowie D-Hilt trainer, which I just had. Where did I just have that? Is it over by me? Aha! Is a wonderful. Let me bring this up. Is a wonderful trainer and a great short sword. I don't count this as a dagger. Now, I took the rope off because at the time I was working around my braces. I kind of regret that because now it's a little uneasy to grip. So I'm going to have to modify this to make this viable for my use. But they're very nice. I wouldn't mind a brace of them. And very much on par with the length of a lot of machetes, which is about 20 inches. This is a very good blade length. But that's not what we're here shopping for. I just wanted to bring that up for a moment. And we'll switch back over. The butterfly sword trainers at 22 each is not bad at all for the dagger types. The Cinque, not bad. I'm trying not to get distracted because they have, I just have to get there to it. And yes, they sell batleths. They're just very expensive. Ooh. See, every time I come through looking for stuff, I find that they have added more. Now, oh no. the youth longsword. They're back in stock? Let me see. 26. Well, shoot. Oh, email me when back in stock. Okay. I almost need one of these because my arms are short enough that they would fit. But they are out of stock currently. The Bolognese daggers are... Where did it go? Sorry, it jumped around. And the Marozo. Oh, God, my speech impediment. Both these are classic period training daggers, but they aren't what I am looking to reference. They have a basic... Ooh, they've got a new basic messer. I may just have to do another Purple Heart Armory order in the fairly near future because I am looking for, the poniard with Nagel. This may be the Perry Dagger replacement. It's going to be much stiffer than the Cold Steel, but roughly same weight and style. Should pair very nice with the pair very nice both with the 1.33, and I suspect, looking at it, let me get this picture here. No, not that picture. This picture. Fine. That, because it is built on the shoulder push-down rubber stock, I should be able to get a chunk of HDPE and put a sail guard, making it a main gouge, very, very easily. I might even be able to get a cup hilt, if I can get the right cup material, and slide it down. Although, given the nature of that guard, I wonder if it isn't possible to make a cup hilt that would slide through and then slide down on top. Now I'm curious. Okay, we'll have to see if we can get, if these guys are in stock. If they are in stock, I may have to order one. Nope. Notify me when back in stock. Okay, cool. So my plan was to order one. I will, because I believe the blade is 17 inches. Yep, 17 inches, standard SCA blade length, 23 overall, weight a third of a pound, so ultra light, easy breezy, beautiful. That will probably be what I have to buy to review next. I'll try to find out when it will be back in stock. Now we'll bring this back up. But will it kill? That's what I have to test, because I have several weapons that are floating around that with that style of construction could be very useful. And I wanted to look into that because I am lamenting the tragedy of the Cold Steel Perry daggers. If you ever see one in the wild, get it for yourself. Absolutely. Now I want to bring up something else. And it was out in the garage, and I don't have Lindex, so it's very, very dusty. But this is my riot shield. And as I recall, it was, it's got a loop in it. Where's that loop? There we go. I love my riot shield because it is a strap shield. It is very feather light. The downside to a light shield is it doesn't absorb the blows. It wobbles much more than a heavier sword. But I should be able to probably run something along the edge to keep the edge from both getting dinged up worse than it already has and dinging up the weapons. And it'll probably be like a split hose or something of that sort. But this gives me an excellent light counterbalance as part of my personal gear that is made to be lightweight. I do have a couple of the Perry daggers. That means the Perry daggers will definitely have to remain mine as my personal lightweight trainers because I can't replace them anymore. And then, of course, I'm going to throw 2 Gundams Never neglect the mustachio. Exactly. Oh god, beautiful, beautiful. But sorry, I dropped two Gundams that I have to eventually sit down and put together. Now, remembering these that I'm keeping here, so now look, it's nice and relatively straight. These are going to be the the rapiers. They are quite fortunately quite available at the $50 line on Amazon. They aren't available through PHA because they're Chinese imports. But I have 6 of them, so they will be things you will see a lot of practice on. Now, I plan to shoot a video about an acquisition. I will have to do that probably Sunday. I have a convention I will be attending tomorrow that will be taking a great deal of my time, and I will discuss that later in the week. But Lon, get your gear together, get training. I will. Oh, one neat thing. In about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, believe it or not, I'm not going as a as a working in a convention. I am going to the American Library Association convention to see what products I can get for the kids, and I'm going with family. It's gonna be a good thing for fun. Yes, actually, and to possibly get materials that can help the library. We shall see. It's very nervous for me whenever I go to a big convention, but you can do that. Yes, absolutely. You can definitely do things like that. Go to ones for fun. Sure, certainly. People forget that, but this is a once every 5 years in our area major event that Amanda attends, for library purposes, and I get to attend in part for library purposes and in part for my own purposes. But that haven't been to one for fun in so long. Maybe you need to. I get overstimulated, but I'm working on it. Good, keep working on it. Well, we are over an hour, and I really don't want to be up too late tonight, so I hope this has been an entertaining and educational program. Thank you to my Patreon folks, especially who make this possible. Guys, I couldn't do it without you. And I will be back next week. I'm planning to do some interspaced videos, and maybe weather and hands showing up. I might even throw some knives. We'll see. No promises, but we will see. Other than that, guys, have a lovely evening. Okay, I want you to be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. I believe it or not, it's very easy for me to forget that. I will see you all next week for another episode of Never Mind the Further. Oh, my other stream just infected my brain. Another episode of the Historical Fencing Guild, where we'll see. I don't know if we're going to do a Cursed Sword review, but we will. You matter. Unless, of course, you multiply yourself by the speed of light squared. Then you energy. Trying to balance the hustle and flow. With that, I will see you all next week for this, and I may have some more content coming up soon. I'm excited. I hope you have a great week. So, guys, what do I need you to do? Do your drills. Keep your eyes open. Be kind to yourself and to each other. And as always, thank you for supporting your local sword master.